Sorry.
Today's lesson is 7-9, so please make sure at the top of your paper you have this labeled Notes 7-9. And we're going to talk about special products and squaring binomials. So again, our objective today is squaring binomials. There are 8 examples. Okay? For some of you, this is going to look very, very similar to what we've been doing the last 2 days with one extra little step to it. So, all right, go ahead and write down number 1. Yep. Then give us just a second. Ms. Fielding's going to show you this one on paper.
Number 1, again, is x plus 5 squared. X plus 5 squared. This is a whole lot like the things that we've been doing so far, but we're going to add an extra step here because, again, the name of the lesson is squaring binomials. So we have our 2 terms inside our parentheses. We have a binomial. It's being squared. Your first step in these problems is to rewrite the problem. X plus 5 times x plus 5. So now that I've rewritten this, it looks a whole lot like all those other problems that we've been doing up until this point. And we're just going to draw our arrows and distribute and multiply this out just like we have been doing. We're going to say x times x plus x times 5 plus 5 times x plus 5 times 5. All right, now I'm going to multiply this out, and I'm going to say x times x is x squared plus 5 times x times 5 is 5x plus 5 times x is 5x plus 5 times 5 is 25. And then I'm going to combine my like terms and say that 5x plus 5x is 10x. And I'm going to bring down the rest of my problem. And this is going to be my final answer here, x squared plus 10x plus 25. Make sure that you have that down before you move on.
Alright, so today there's 2 different ways to work the problems that we're going to work. First way is the way that Ms. Fielding showed you, where you write it out twice and it goes back to looking exactly like it did in the last 2 previous lessons. This next way is kind of a little bit of a shortcut, but you have to understand the shortcut to be able to use this. So in the end, we're going to give you the option and let you use whichever method you think works for you. But we do want to show you both ways. So go ahead and write this. It says parentheses a plus b squared equals a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. This is going to be our shortcut. And basically it means the square of the first term plus twice the product of the 2 terms plus the square of the last term. And we're going to look for this. Okay? The only thing that you have to write here is what's at the top. You do not have to write all of the other words. Just the equation here. Take a minute, make sure you have that written before you move on. Alright, on the left side of the screen over here is exactly what Ms. Fielding did on paper, so we're not going to rewrite that again. Over here, again, I'm going to show you this other method for how to work this exactly the same way so that you can see that we're going to get exactly the same answer no matter which way we decide to work it. So first thing we're going to do is label our A and B so that it matches up with our equation here. And then I'm going to explain it without the A and B because I think that's a little bit confusing. So we're going to square the first term. So we're going to take the first term right here, which is x, and we're going to square it. So we're going to say x squared, which is the same thing as the a squared part. And then twice the product of a times b. So basically we're going to say plus 2 times both the first and second term here. So 2 times x times 5. And then finally we're going to square the last term. So we're going to take this last term, this 5, and square it on the end. So again, just to kind of recap, we take the first term and square it. Then it's always a 2 times the first and last term plus the last term squared. So here all we really have to do is this middle part and then square the 5. So x squared is just that x squared, plus x times 5 is 5x, times 2 is 10x, and then 5 squared is 25. So we end up with x squared plus 10x plus 25. Which again, if you look over here, the way we did it where we split it up into 2, we get exactly the same answer. So again, you can use the method that Ms. Fielden showed you on paper, or you can use this new method that I've shown you. Again, that is completely up to you. You must write both methods down for notes. That way you have both methods to look at. Take a minute, make sure that you have this work written down. You do not have to write the words, just the work that's up there.
Just on this side because you've already written this down.
And you don't have to write what's in the box either. Take a minute, make sure you've got it.
Okay, let's look at number 2. Go ahead and get this down. It is n minus 4 squared. If you're wondering why I'm having you rewrite the problem and write what's in parentheses 2 times, think about if you had the problem and it was 5 squared. When we ask you guys what 5 squared is, you say, well, it's 5 times 5. So 5 times 5, you wrote it 2 times. So that's all we're asking you to do with what's in parentheses. Because it's squared, you're writing it n minus 4 times n minus 4. And we're having you write it out 2 times, just like you did if it was 5 squared. So I'm going to go ahead and add the opposite here. I'm going to rewrite my problem again, and I'm going to say n plus a negative 4 times n plus a negative 4. Because again, when I distribute, I always need to add the opposite. It saves a lot of trouble in the long run. So now I'm going to put in my arrows. I should have skipped a line, and I'm sorry, it's kind of sloppy. And I'm going to say that I have n times n plus n times negative 4 plus negative 4 times n plus negative 4 times negative 4. Alright, and now you're simply going to multiply this on out. And you're going to say n times n is n squared. N times negative 4 is negative 4n. And I'm going to write that by saying minus 4n. You could also say plus a negative 4n. Negative 4 times n is negative 4n. Negative 4 times negative 4 gives me positive 16. So now I'm going to combine my like terms. I have negative 4n, negative 4n. They're both negative, so they're essentially being added, which gives me negative 8n. And I have n squared minus 8n plus 16. And that's my final answer. So get all that down before you move on. And now we're going to look at the same problem in a different way. But remember, you have to write down both forms.
Alright, so again, on the left over here is exactly what Ms. Fielden showed you, but she showed you on paper. So you do not have to write this part down. Again, this is just so that we can compare and make sure our answers are the same. We're going to use the other, like I said, I like to call it the shortcut method because it does require a little bit less work. But again, if you like this method over here, whenever it comes to the assignment tomorrow, then use that method. It does not matter to me which method that you use. Alright, so for the second method, I'm going to go ahead and say n plus negative 4 so that I don't make a mistake with my sign, and then that's squared. So I'm going to square my first term, so I'm going to square my n, so that's n squared. Then I'm going to say plus 2 times my first and last term multiplied together, so 2 times my first term, which was n, times my last term, which was negative 4. Plus my last term squared, so I'm going to say negative 4 squared. Then I'm going to do my multiplication. N squared is just n squared. Then I'm going to say n times negative 4 is negative 4n times 2 gives me negative 8n. And then negative 4 squared is negative 4 times negative 4, which is a positive 16. I'm going to change my plus negative 8n back to minus, so I have n squared minus 8n plus 16. And again, notice that you got the same answer whether you use the method on the left or if you use the method on the right. Okay. Take a minute, make sure you have the second method down, because again, for notes, you must write both of them. Tomorrow during the assignment, you may pick which one you want to use. And you do not have to write what's in the box.
All right, on number 3, go ahead and write down 3y minus 1 squared. And go ahead and pick a method and try this one on your own, and then we're going to show you the work and let you check your answer. But go ahead and choose a method and try this one on your own, whether you want to write it out twice and multiply it out, distribute it out the same way that we've been doing for a couple of days, or if you want to try the new method with what we call the shortcut, with the a squared 2ab plus b squared. Go ahead and pause the video and do this one on your own. Okay, so now look at this slide, and if you see right here, this is what you should have gotten as your final answer. This is what your work should look like if you distributed it out the same way we've been doing it. And if you chose the shortcut method, you also obviously should have gotten the same answer, but this is what your work should have looked like. So if you did not get this answer, take a moment and go back and look at the work and figure out exactly where you went wrong. Erase your mistakes and correct your work before you move on. Go ahead and pause the video now and get that taken care of. All right, go ahead and write down number 4 for me. Number 4, you might notice, is a little bit different than the ones that we've been doing so far, because now we have 2 variables in here, but we had 2 variables yesterday, so it's really not that big of a deal. It's not like you've never seen this before. The first step, as always, is to rewrite the problem out 2 times. So we're going to say 3a plus 2b times 3a plus 2b. And now I'm going to draw my arrows. Again, it is not optional. If you're using this method, it is not optional to draw your arrows, and it is not optional to rewrite each of the steps of the problem. So 3a times 2b plus 3a times, sorry, I should have said 3a times 3a. Let me fix that. It doesn't make it wrong, but I just want to be consistent and go in the same order. So I'm going to say 3a times 3a, 3a times 2b, plus 2b times 3a, plus, I don't want to get confused and think that that's a negative there, 2b times 2b. And now I'm just going to multiply this out. 3a times 3a gives me 9a squared plus 3a times 2b. 3 times 2 is 6. A times b is AB. And again, just like yesterday, I'm going to leave my letters in alphabetical order. 2b times 3a. 2 times 3 is 6. B times A is written AB. Plus 2b times 2b. 2 times 2 is 4. B times B is B squared. So now I'm going to look at my like terms. I have 6ab and 6ab, which is going to give me 12ab. And again, because I wrote my letters in alphabetical order, it's easy for me to identify that those are like terms. Don't make the mistake of saying that AB and BA are not the same term. That's why we always put them in alphabetical order. So this should be your final answer here. You should have 9a squared plus 12ab plus 4b squared. Get all that down before you move forward. And now we're going to look at the other method.
All right, so again, we're going to look at the other method for this problem, and we're going to take the first term and we're going to square it. So we're going to say 3a squared plus 2 times the first and last term, so 2 times 3a times 2b, and then plus the last term squared, so we're going to square the 2b. We're going to do all of our multiplication here. 3a squared, I'm going to say 3 squared is 9 and a squared is a squared, so that's going to be 9a squared. And again, it's showing you that we're using exponent property number 6. So we're going to say 3 squared is 9 and a squared is a squared, plus we're going to say 3a times 2b. 3 times 2 is 6, and a times b is ab, so we end up with 6ab times 2 is 12ab. And then we say 2b squared. We're going to say 2 squared is 4, and b squared is b squared. So we have 9a squared plus 12ab plus 4b squared. And again, notice we got the same answer no matter which method that we used. So take a minute, make sure you have this copied. You do not have to have what's in the blue box or what's in the box down here. You just need to have the work for the problem. Take a minute, make sure you have that down before you move on.
All right, go ahead and write down number 5. It's open parentheses 2m minus n, close parentheses squared. The very first thing I want you to do here is add this, change this to plus a negative n. Plus a negative n. Now I want you to choose a method, whether you're going to rewrite it 2 times and distribute, multiply everything out, or if you're going to use the shortcut method, it's your choice. I want you to go ahead and pause the video now and work out this problem and get your final answer before you hit play. All right, if you used the same method that we've been using, you can see here that when this problem was rewritten out, it does actually have the 1 in here. I didn't ask you to add the 1 because I find that when you're multiplying, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference whether or not you have it there. But if you put the 1 there, it certainly doesn't make it wrong. If you multiplied it out, this is what you should have gotten: 4m squared plus negative 4mn plus n squared. You also could have had 4m squared minus 4mn plus n squared, and that is the correct answer. If you chose this method and you did not get this answer, then pause the video now, check the work up here, and figure out exactly where you went wrong. If you chose this method and did the shortcut, obviously you should have still gotten the same answer: 4m squared plus a negative 4mn plus n squared, or 4m squared minus 4mn plus n squared. If you chose this method and you did not get this answer, then check the work and figure out exactly where you went wrong and get that fixed before you move forward.
All right, go ahead and write this one down. This one looks a little bit different. It's just a special product. It says x plus 5 and then x minus 5. If we look at this and we distribute here, we get x times x plus negative 5 times x plus 5 times x plus 5 times negative 5. When we distribute, please make sure you drew your arrows, even though they are not in the slide on the PowerPoint. Then we're going to multiply x times x is x squared, negative 5 times x is negative 5x, 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. We're going to put our 2 middle terms together, but notice here I have a negative 5x and a positive 5x, so they're actually going to cancel. So my 2 middle terms are going to cancel here, and I'm just going to be left with x squared minus 25. That's what makes this a special product, is because those 2 middle terms cancel and I don't have a middle term here. So if you happen to notice that they're exactly the same except one's a plus and one's a minus, you can go ahead and just square the first term and then square the last term and make sure you have a minus sign in the middle without actually doing all the work, although we still want to see that for this problem. But again, you can just notice that if it's a plus one and a minus in the other, you should know that your middle terms here are going to cancel themselves out. Take a minute, make sure you have that written down before you move on.
All right, go ahead and write down number 7, and do me a favor and don't freak out when you write it. You have a squared plus b squared and it's all raised to the second power. So the first thing I'm going to do, just like I have been, is I'm going to say that this is the same thing as a squared plus b squared times a squared plus b squared. Now I'm going to draw my arrows, and I'm going to take this one step at a time, and I think that you'll find if you take it one step at a time, it's much less intimidating than it seems to be to begin with. All right, now I'm going to write this out in parentheses. I'm going to say my first is a squared times a squared plus a squared times b squared plus b squared times a squared plus b squared times b squared. And now I'm just going to multiply these out. I know how to multiply these because I know my exponent properties, and I know that when I have the same base and I'm multiplying, I'm adding the exponents. So a squared times a squared equals a to the fourth. Plus, here I have a squared and b squared. They are not the same base number, so that simply equals a squared b squared. Here I have b squared times a squared, and again, I'm going to list those in alphabetical order and say a squared b squared. And here I have b squared times b squared, and that equals b to the fourth, because when I'm multiplying and I have the same base, I'm adding. So the only other thing that I want you to do here is to go back and put a 1 in front of your a squared b squareds, because when we're adding, we do a whole lot better if we put a 1 in front of our variables, because we know that we're actually adding those together, and we don't get confused and think that we're multiplying or anything crazy like that. So I have some like terms here. Again, I've listed my variables alphabetically, and I can see that a squared b squared is the same term. So I don't just have one a squared b squared, but I have two a squared b squareds, and I simply write that as saying 2 a squared b squared. Then I'm going to bring down my b to the fourth, bring down my a to the fourth, and my plus signs, and it's a done deal. That's my final answer. Make sure you get that down before we look at the other method.
All right, let's look at the other method for this one. Again, even though it, like Ms. Wilson said, it looks kind of intimidating, if you'll still go through the exact same steps, you'll be okay, because again, we're using the same method even though this one's a little bit more complicated. We're going to take our first term and square it. So we're going to say a squared squared. Then we're going to say twice the product of the two terms, or 2 times the first term and the last term. So 2 times my first term, which is a squared, times my last term, which is b squared. And then finally, plus my last term squared. So I'm going to say b squared squared. Then again, this is where my exponent properties come into play. If I have a power to a power, I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to say 2 times 2 is 4. So that's going to become a to the fourth. And then here, a squared times b squared, again, is just a squared b squared, times 2 is 2a squared b squared. Plus, and then if I have b to the second raised to the second, again, a power raised to a power, you're going to multiply those, and 2 times 2 is 4. So that's a to the fourth plus 2a squared b squared plus b to the fourth. And that's the same answer we got whenever we did it the other way. Take a minute, make sure you have that written down. Again, you do not have to write what's in the box, just make sure you have the work written.
All right, number 8 looks a whole lot like number 7. The only difference here is that you have this negative here. So I want you to change this to plus a negative y squared. And go ahead and pick a method and work this one out on your own. You can work it out the traditional way where we've been distributing and multiplying everything, or you can use the shortcut method. Choose your own method and pause the video now, work it out, and then we'll show you the answers. All right, hopefully you had a minute to pause the video and work this one out. So we're going to go ahead and show you the answers. This should be your final answer, x to the fourth plus a negative 2x squared y squared plus y to the fourth. You could also say x to the fourth minus 2x squared y squared plus y to the fourth. And you need to go back and look at this work and figure out where you went wrong if you did not come up with the correct answer. Get that fixed. And if you didn't use this method, then hold on just a second and we'll show you the shortcut method.
Alright, so this is the shortcut method. Make sure that, again, we still come up with the same answer of x to the fourth plus negative 2x squared y squared plus y to the fourth. Or again, you could have said minus 2x squared y squared instead of plus the negative. Go back, if you did not get that answer and you used the shortcut method, please go back to this step right here and look and see maybe where you went wrong, and please make sure that you fix that and understand what to do the next time. So again, take time, go back, find where your mistake was, and fix that. Alright, so now we've covered our objective. We should be able to square binomials. Thank you for watching. That's the end of your video.